for authors, filmmakers, entertainment, and all your listening needs. Listen now to Talk Now Radio, where no topic is taboo.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Talk Now Radio. This is your host, Royce the Redneck Radio Man, and joining me today is Susan Shumsky, and we're going to be talking about actually two of her books, one of them being The Power of Chakras, and the other one, The Power of Auras, and we're going to kind of blend this here together, I'm pretty sure, as we go. She's been on my show before. She was the author of Instant Healing, which is also another fantastic read I would recommend to anybody. So, Susan, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you, Royce?
I'm doing pretty good. I think startled you there, brought you in unexpectedly, sort of. But
it's all good.
I meant to actually mention, though, before bringing you in, that if you folks would like to call in and ask questions, the number's 832-632-7904. And if you want to learn more about Susan, you can go to our website, www.divinerevelation.org. And she also has links to her books there if you want to get them. And you could also purchase them right here at my site by scrolling down below her description, and you'll see them both linked to Amazon. Want to apologize to everybody for missing the last two shows this week. I was in the hospital and was unable to make it with pneumonia, but as you can all see, I'm ready back and in action again. So with that, we're going to proceed. Susan, I got to ask you, just out of curiosity, how many books does this make you've written so far?
I have 10 books in print.
10? That's quite a lot.
It is. Considering the fact that I started writing very late in my life. I started writing in 1990, and my first book was published in 1996. So, indeed, that's quite a few books for that length of time.
You must really enjoy writing.
I do love to write, yeah. It's one of the things that I really love doing, yes, in fact.
Well, I got to tell you, it's a handy thing to be able to do if you're good with grammar and that. And myself, I'm not that good with grammar, but if you are, it's a great thing to be able to do. I mean, you get to work from your house, laid back atmosphere, no boss.
Right.
A lot of pluses to it, and I'm sure there's a lot of downsides to it as well.
Mm-hmm. No, not too many downsides. Well, the fact that you don't make any money. That would be a downside.
Not unless you're Dan Brown.
Yes. Not unless you're Dan Brown or Stephen King, That's right.
Alrighty. So, did both of these books come out at the same time, or?
Well, The Power of Auras came out in November, and The Power of Chakras came out in December.
Oh, wow. You did those right back to back. So, give us a little summary about The Power of Auras.
Well, okay. The Power of Auras is a book that helps any individual to increase the energy in their energy field, and also to learn about what the energy field is and how to see it or feel it or measure it by various means, and also all the details that you could ever want to know about auras, including colors and what they mean, and including various practices that will help you to increase your charisma, increase your energy, make you more prosperous, more abundant. Because really, the most important thing about auras is that we do have life force energy that is flowing through our energy field, and when we increase that life force energy, we become more influential, we become more vibrant, we have more magnetic energy, we become more attractive and more prosperous because we're attracting good into our lives.
So this actually, from what I'm hearing, is all part of one big picture about, say, unclogging your chakras and increasing your aura, increasing your frequency.
Right.
It all ties into Ascension at some point.
Absolutely. It all ties into higher consciousness, but even if you don't necessarily aspire to higher consciousness, you certainly want to be more healthy, more strong, more powerful, have more energy and more prosperity and more love in your life. And all of that comes from increasing the energy in your energy field.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. Now, I know that even, I think it was Edgar Casey, he was able to see people's auras, and in fact, he knew one time not to get on an elevator because everybody was going to die because he couldn't see their aura at all.
As a matter of fact, that very story is in my book, The Power of Auras, and many other stories in that book. And yes, in the book, The Power of Auras, there are a couple chapters that help you to be able to perceive auras in various ways, either through seeing or through feeling. Most people are more proficient at feeling auras than seeing auras. It's more rare for a person to be able to see auras. And, by the way, for most people, it's easier to see the aura with the eyes closed than with the eyes open.
I was totally unaware of that.
Yeah, because most people are more clairvoyant in meditation or with eyes closed than they are with eyes open. It's more difficult, you need more skill to be able to see auras with eyes open. But I do teach people how to do both in the book, The Power of Auras.
Okay, now exactly what all do you teach in that book? I mean, without giving away the candy store, of course.
Well, I mean, the reality is that I couldn't possibly give away the candy store in a short interview. I mean, the book contains so much information and knowledge, and it even includes scientific research about auras. It includes everything you'd ever want to know about the energy field and the layers of the energy field, and also specific practices for increasing the energy in your field, like breathing exercises and using color and using sound. And there's a lot of ways to increase the energy in your field. And also a lot of exercises to help you to develop your clairvoyant or clairsentient abilities so that you can perceive the auras. And in fact, I also teach in that book, I teach dowsing to help you to be able to measure the energy field. And I teach people specific movements, specific exercises, physical exercises as well to help you increase the energy in your field. And the other thing that I include in the book is healing affirmations that will help you to clear out, to cleanse your energy field, because many people have problems in their energy field, anomalies, psychic ties, binding ties they might have, or they may have a different odd anomalies in their field, such as psychic plates, psychic shackles, psychic jails, tentacles, facade bodies or armors that they're wearing, defensive armors, thought forms, negative thought forms. There's patterns, habits, beliefs. Also astral entities or energies, lower energies. So, I mean, there's just so much that can attach itself to your energy field, or, you know, different hooks people might even install in your energy field, like hooks and nets and all kinds of things. So also in the book, I teach people how to clear those out from your energy field and to become more healthy as a result.
Okay. Now in the chat room, we got a question. Getting a feeling about someone, is that the same as feeling their aura?
It is, yes. As a matter of fact, everyone senses auras because when we first meet somebody, we get a sense of who that person is. We might feel, oh, that person seems or feels really open-hearted, or that person seems or feels really defensive, or that person feels like I don't want to get near that person. I have a feeling about that person. That person has like a prickly aura. I don't want to get close to that person. Or that you may feel, really warm feeling. And that's true about places as well. You might walk into a house and just sense, what's been going on here. I feel like there's a feeling that people have been arguing here, or that there's just a bad vibe in this place. You
kind of like when you walk into a store and you lay eyes on somebody and you just feel drawn to them and you don't know why.
Yes, and you're reading the energy that way, yeah. Or if you go into, for example, a hospital or a mental institution or a prison, a bar, a place with really bad vibes, you'll just sense that the vibes, especially like a prison would be the worst, really bad vibes in those kinds of places. Whereas if you go to a beautiful spiritual place, you go to the ocean, you go to a lake, you go to a forest, you're out in nature, or you're in a beautiful cathedral, perhaps, or a beautiful temple, something like that, maybe a beautiful spiritual vortex like Sedona or Mount Shasta or the Tetons, or just various places where you feel these really high vibrations, you feel the high energy. So what you're doing really, in essence, is you're reading the aura of that place, or you're reading the aura of the people that you meet. So everyone has this ability to sense auras, and most people, like I said, are more clairsentient. Most people can feel more than they can see.
Okay, now a minute ago you were mentioning psych hospitals and prisons. I was thinking when I heard you say it, that isn't it possible that in places of lower negative energies like that, though, to get a misreading based on expectations?
Not really.
So it wouldn't be like, well, I'm expecting a negative person in a prison, therefore I'm going to read them that way, whether they're that way or not, in other words?
Not really, no. A prison has an extremely dense vibration in it. Very, very dense vibration.
Okay.
Now, you may walk into some hospitals that have a much better vibration than other hospitals. It will depend on many, many things, But if you're going into like a psychiatric hospital, as you mentioned, that will undoubtedly have a very bad vibration, because people in that place they just have a bad vibration. Many of them are possessed or oppressed by astral entities. Many of them have very negative thought forms, and that's just going to be displayed in the atmosphere there. It's just the way it is.
So pretty much when you're reading auras, what you see is what you get. It's not much chance of a false positive or a false negative in, say, the majority of the situations?
Well, obviously, if you're going to actually read auras, if you're going to be an aura reader, then you're either skilled at it or you're not. And certainly you can get false readings if you're actually reading auras. It's just like any psychic,
Okay.
reader. There are good psychics. There are not so good psychics. There are psychics that can perceive things very accurately. There are psychics that their own filter of their own mind is standing between them and what they're trying to read. So it obviously depends on skill.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. Now, you yourself, you've been doing this for quite some time, haven't you? I think you're, according to your bio, you're an instructor.
Well, I've been practicing and teaching spiritual disciplines since 1967.
Wow.
So yeah, I've been in this field for a very long time.
Wow,
I teach meditation.
Your picture looks so young.
Yeah, I am 67 years old, actually. And that picture was taken only about a year or two ago.
Wow, you look good for that. And I hope that didn't come out the wrong way.
No, it came out exactly the right way. Thank you. That's a compliment.
But yeah, you do. You look like you're still in your 30s.
I don't know which
30,
picture you're
there.
looking at. I hope you're looking at a picture that's on my current website and not something that the publicist sent to you.
I I'm not sure, but I think I got this one, off of Warwick.
Yeah, they have some old picture there.
Oh, that's actually an old one. Okay.
Yeah, you should go to my website, drsusan.org, and you'll see more recent pictures.
Okay. That reminds me, are you by any chance doing workshops or have any forums or anywhere that people can meet with you and learn about this here online?
Absolutely. And the best thing to do is to go to drsusan.org. That's drsusan.org, and just put your email address into the box there, into the email, where you can sign up or subscribe. And then I will notify you of different telesummits that I'm doing, of different classes, online classes that I'm doing. And if you actually sign up on the mail list where you fill in more information, which is also available on my website, if you click on sign the mailing list, in other words, then I'll be able to notify you if I happen to be in your area. So, but the main thing is just go to the front page, drsusan.org, and put your email address in there.
So then you do travel and,
I do.
seminar stuff. You ever come around the Houston area?
Sometimes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I asked because that's where I'm at.
Oh, okay.
Alrighty. Well, moving right on along with this here. Does working on your auras and working on the chakras, are they linked together?
Yes, because your chakras, and the way to pronounce that word is chakra. It's a Sanskrit word, and it denotes a wheel. It means wheel. And, okay, so the chakras are in the subtle energy field. They are in your, what we call the pranamaya kosha, which is your pranic body or your energy body. And prana is life force energy that flows through your subtle body and that gives life to your physical body. So the chakras are in that particular layer of the human energy field. And prana is, as I said, means life force energy, but in China they call that chi, and in Japan they call that ki. So you may have heard of chi probably more often than you may have heard of prana, but prana is the Sanskrit name for that same thing. And in that subtle body, the prana flows through conduits of subtle energy that are called nadis. They're also called meridians in the Chinese system of energy medicine. And so when prana is flowing through the body easily without blockages, then you're very healthy and strong. Obviously, if there's blockages within the pranic body or within the chakras, then it may manifest as some weakness or illness, either mental or physical. So it's important that your energy field be strong and healthy. And then when you have more health in your energy body, your pranic body, then you'll have more health in your physical body. So there's 5 layers of the energy field, and one of those is what we call the pranic body or pranamaya kosha. Kosha means sheath.
Okay. Now, you was talking about, these blockages in your mental and physical health. Could depression be caused by having, say, like a blockage of some sort or a problem in the aura? Absolutely.
As a matter of fact, it is in the auric field. I mean, it's not in your physical body. Depression is not something that you dissect a corpse and you find depression there. It's not, it's not in your physical body. It's in your subtle body. So it's in your mental body usually. And that's called the monomaya kosha, which is your mental body. That's your subconscious mind or your sensory mind, we might call it. It's the mind through which you see, hear, taste, touch, or feel. That is your mental body. And that's the body where you see the colors of the auric field. You see colors in that particular layer of your energy body. It's your monomaya kosha, or your mental body. So depression will be there as a result of negative thoughts, feelings, and emotions, or as a result of negative influences that you may accrue through your environment. If you are absorbing the negative influences in your environment, that can cause mental illness, depression, various problems, or your environment on the gross level or on the subtle level. There may be astral entities, astral influences from the lower astral world where there are beings who are attaching themselves to you and causing problems. So, this is something that can be healed, and you can use various affirmative prayers to help you to heal mental difficulties, and they can be healed quite effectively through affirmative prayer. And in my book, The Power of Auras, I do provide many of these healing prayers, but there are a lot more in my book, Instant Healing. There's actually 243 affirmative prayers in that book to help you with all kinds of situations and circumstances and problems, including any kind of mental illness or physical illness and so on.
Now, you were saying earlier you could feel people's auras. Can you feel the energy from their chakras as well?
Some people, like, for example, a medical intuitive may be able to do that. They might be able to read the chakras and be able to measure them or be able to see them, feel them, and so on, and be able to prescribe, even diagnose and prescribe as a result of that. However, in my book, The Power of Auras, I teach you a method called dowsing, which is using a specific tools like a pendulum, L rods, Y rods, and bobbers. Those are the 4 tools that I teach in the book, The Power of Auras, to help you to be able to measure the energy in your field and to specifically measure the energy in various chakras. So you can learn how to do that through using, I call it intuitive kinesiology, but most people know that as dowsing, which means using these tools to measure things, including being able to measure the energy in a particular chakra, or to see maybe there's a color that if you increase that color, it will help with your energy in your field or in a specific chakra. And you can measure all kinds of things through using dowsing, and you can also use it to increase the energy. It's really a powerful method.
So could this also be used in, say, like a fibromyalgia patient?
Certainly it can be used for any physical healing. You can use dowsing to help diagnose and heal things. But of course, I would also recommend that you go to a healthcare professional as well and don't just rely on these alternative methods.
Right. Do both at the same time, maybe?
Yes, that's what I would recommend. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, yeah, because pills is always nice when you're actually feeling the pain, in other words.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I know people who have fibromyalgia, and my sister knows people, and I know the doctor will tell you that the more active you are, the better off you're going to be, the easier it'll be to handle your pain. But most people that have it will say, I can't do anything because of the pain.
I see. Well, that sounds horrible. That sounds really upsetting, and I'm very sorry to hear that people contract that kind of disease that's so painful. It sounds awful.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, fortunately, I'm glad I'm not one of them, but it is sad to think that anybody would have to live that way. And I know that it's nice to find help books, and in honesty, you can go to a doctor, and sometimes they can help, sometimes they can't.
Right.
And to have an alternative means is, I think, also nice to do, where if one ain't working, you could try the other at the same time. Right.
Absolutely.
Which is
I would recommend meditation. That's another thing that I teach. For example, in my book, The Power of Auras, well, in both books, The Power of Auras and The Power of Chakras, there are meditations there in the book to help you to relax, to also increase the energy in your field, to open the chakras, to bring specific colors into the auric field. There's some really great meditations in those books, The Power of Chakras and The Power of Auras, both.
Well, do you have kind of like tips for daily living, health tips for your chakras and auras, little like exercises or health diets or that sort of thing?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. For example, in the book, in both books, I have that. In The Power of Auras, I have some really great movement exercises called Brain Gym to help you to clear out your energy field and to give you a greater integration in your energy field to make you feel more balanced, to have more equanimity and more equilibrium in your field. And also specific tapping, which they call that EMT. It's called Emotional Freedom Technique. EFT is something that I also teach, a tapping method. I teach that in The Power of Auras. I also teach breathing exercises that you can use, and I teach specific methods you can use with color and with sound in the book The Power of Auras. In the book The Power of Chakras, I teach traditional yogic practices, traditional practices from India, such as the breathing exercises, which is called pranayama. I also teach the bandhas, which are these muscular locks that are very powerful for awakening subtle energy in your body, for awakening a specific kind of energy called kundalini that gives you higher consciousness and awakens your subtle perception. And I also teach methods of asanas, of specific physical postures. I refer to another of my books called Exploring Meditation that has specific yogic exercises in it that can be very helpful. Not only traditional exercises that you would do on the floor, but also exercises you would do standing. I call that couch potato yoga. That's in my book, Exploring Meditation. And those are very, very powerful exercises that I teach there. So these are all, I give tons of these kinds of exercises that are very, very helpful for people and that can be used on a daily basis.
Okay, now some of these yoga exercises are also in these two books we're talking about, right?
Yes, the bandhas and the pranayama. Bandhas are muscular locks, and the pranayama is the breathing exercises, yes.
Okay. Yeah, my wife was practicing yoga for a while there when they had it on TV.
Oh.
She said they changed the show and she don't do it anymore.
That's too bad. She should get a CD or something of a yoga class and do it. Just do it. I mean, a DVD. She should get a DVD and practice it.
Well, do you happen to know if yoga's any good for, say, like emphysema?
Well, pranayama would be. Pranayama is the breathing exercises, and that would be very, very good for emphysema. And I teach that in both books, The Power of Auras and The Power of Chakras. I teach different breathing exercises in each one of those books.
That's interesting.
I don't even overlap. They're different exercises in each book because I want to give you something new. If I have a new book, something different.
Which is something I was going to come around to asking you eventually, which is, you got a new book in the making?
I have a couple new books in the making. I'm currently writing a book about the third eye. And also I have a book that's a memoir that I'm working on. So I've got 2 books right now that I'm working on.
Okay, now I noticed that all of your books are all tied into healing, Kundalini, chakra, or everything to do with spirituality. So you're overall a spiritual maintenance physician, you might say, for want of a better description?
Well, actually, my books are more focused on meditation than they are on energy healing. I have main thing I teach is meditation and prayer. So I teach people something called Divine Revelation. I have a book called Divine Revelation. That's my first book. And that's about learning how to listen to the still small voice of God within, learning how to have direct divine communication and contact, learning how to distinguish and discern between the true voice of spirit and other voices in your mind, learning how to have a direct mystical experiences of God. And that's Divine Revelation. I also wrote another book called How to Hear the Voice of God that ties in with that book. That's very similar, covers some of the same territory, but it also has a beautiful guided meditation CD attached to that book. That's the How to Hear the Voice of God. But then I wrote a couple books on prayer, Miracle Prayer and Instant Healing, which teach affirmative prayer, teach you how to pray and get results. And so mainly the main thing I teach is meditation and prayer. However, my publisher asked me to write the Auras book, the Chakras book, and now the Third Eye book. They're the ones that are the culprits with regards to, to asking me to write these other books, which I'm more than happy to do because I have knowledge in these areas because of the fact that I lived for 22 years earlier in my life. I lived in an ashram with a spiritual master from India.
Yeah, you're referring to what, New Page Books?
Right. New Page Books asked me to write the books on chakras, on auras, and now also on the Third Eye. They've asked me to write these books.
I've interviewed a bunch of authors for Warwick, and when you interview for Warwick, you're actually by default interviewing for New Page. And
right.
It's pretty common practice for them to, request certain books on certain topics from various authors.
Oh, okay.
Because they've done it with other authors like Nick Redfern and, a few others, in other words. I don't know why they do it, but I guess they're just trying to, get something new going, in other words.
Well, they do market research, I think, and they figure what they want to put into their list. And if they don't have a book on that topic and they have a specific author in mind that they want to write that book, they'll ask an author. And I was asked to write several books by New Page. In fact, the first book I ever wrote by New Page, they asked for me to write. It was exploring meditation. And then they went on to ask me to write exploring chakras, exploring auras, and now this Third Eye one, as I said.
Now, I want to remind everybody that you can learn more about her at www.divinerevelation.org. And as she was saying, also at www.drsusan.org. Did I get that right, by the way?
drsusan.org will take you to the same place.
Oh, take you to the same place?
It's just easier for people to spell. So the website's drsusan.org.
Okay. And also, don't forget to call in numbers 832-632-7904 if you have any questions, or you can ask them in the chat room, either one. When do you expect this Third Eye book to be out?
It's coming out in the spring of 2015.
2015.
Mm-hmm.
Now, isn't there a chakra that's involved with the Third Eye?
Yes, there's a chakra that's involved with the Third Eye. It's called Agya chakra, and it is it's in the pineal gland. It's actually lodged right there in the pineal gland, and that's where it exists. And also there's what we call a trigger point that's in the middle of your forehead.
Now, from what I've read, and I don't know how accurate it is, some people consider the pineal gland to be the seat of the soul. Is that correct?
Well, I suppose some people might put it there. I don't know. I'd put it more in the heart.
You put it more in the heart? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was about to say, you sound like you're not so sure you agree.
The pineal gland is a place where you have clairvoyant sight. It's the place where light enters into the body. That's the reason why it is associated with melatonin, and why the doctors say that, or medical science says that the pineal gland is associated with light, with the light coming into your body.
Oh, I was unaware of that. Now, I had read that it was shaped like a pine cone, but then again, you read a lot of things online.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I mean, that's the reason why it's called the pineal gland, because it's a pine cone shaped, supposedly, thing. And although, to tell you the truth, I haven't seen a dissected corpse, and I haven't seen the pineal gland, but But mainly, it is the seat of intuition. It's the seat where you can see a subtle clairvoyant sight from that place. So often people, when they have clairvoyant sight and they're in meditation, they will often see the visions in the third eye area, or in the kshetram, which is the brow area, the forehead area. And that's where people will often see their visions, is right there. Because that's really where the clairvoyant sight is lodged or located. The third eye means the eye of being able to see clairvoyantly.
Now, some people have also said that when it comes to the third eye, that when Jesus said, "Let your eye be single," he was referring to this third eye. Do you have any thoughts or anything on that?
Yeah, I believe that he was speaking of that. If thine eye be single, thy body will be full of light. And yes, I believe that he was talking about the third eye in that particular quote.
Well, if you're right about the third eye being connected to the pineal gland, and that being, partly having something to do with light, well, then the whole thing would add up naturally. In other words,
It does. It does add up. Indeed.
Now we got a comment here in the chat room that when she was on the Trail of Tears, she could feel the heaviness of Native Americans and their sadness.
Right.
Yeah, so I guess that even after people are long dead, in other words, you could still feel their auras if you go through the same area?
What you're feeling is thought forms that are left over from those experiences, or there may also be entities that are there, that are stuck there, that actually are haunting the Trail of Tears. And there are some. As a matter of fact, I can tell you an interesting little story if you'd like to hear it.
Sure.
Okay, well, there was a very strong and healthy and active guy. He was in his 80s. Let's call him Mr. D. And Mr. D was in Fayetteville, Arkansas. He was an activist, whenever there was some kind of cause, he would join into it. And one day he moved into a tiny retirement apartment because he wanted to write his memoirs. And just 2 weeks after he moved into the apartment, Mr. D became severely incapacitated. His body was in enormous pain, and he became contorted and twisted and bent over. He seemed to all of a sudden contract this very major arthritic condition. And finally, he seemed to lose all hope as though his spirit had left him. He just became so depressed and demoralized. So, at the end of his rope, he hobbled into a healing center there in Fayetteville called the Ozark Research Institute. And there he received a healing on a massage table. And one of the practitioners there, Gladys, who actually runs the center, Gladys McCoy, she asked this man to draw a diagram of his apartment. And then she used a dowsing tool. She used her pendulum to locate detrimental energies that were in his building. And as she was clearing these adverse energies, she suddenly saw a vision of a incapacitated, physically challenged Native American Indian. And he was all bent and gnarled, and he was dragging around with 2 forked sticks that were bound with rawhide to his upper arms, and he was using those as crutches. And Gladys, what she discovered was that the Indian was quite fond of Mr. D and that he had taken possession of his body. So she spoke to the Indian man, and she told him that he was hurting Mr. D, and she asked him to leave the premises. And the Indian was unwilling to go into the divine light. He was unwilling to move on into the divine realm, but he did leave the guy alone. He did leave the apartment, and he moved on. And within 1 week after this, Mr. D was totally well, and he was back to his normal active lifestyle. And he was once again climbing trees with his chainsaw, and he was very active in doing his work. And it turned out that his apartment was located along the Trail of Tears in an area with many Indian mounds. And in that region, if you're sensitive, you can sense the sadness and sorrow in the atmosphere.
Oh, wow. Well, I've never actually been to that area to have the experience myself, but I do know that some ghost hunters do say that they are able to latch on to negative energy that's left behind, in other words.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So that's not an uncommon, event, in other words. What was I trying to... I lost my place there for just a second. I'm trying to get it back.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to make sure that I don't forget anything. Is there anything in these here books that you might want to share that I haven't thought to ask about?
Well, the chakras, I in my book, The Power of Chakras, I explain and describe in great detail the 14 chakras that are described in the ancient scriptures of India. There are 7 major chakras, and there are 7 other chakras. And these chakras are described, like I said, I went back to the ancient scriptures of India to find the most authentic information that I could find about the chakra system. So you'll find that many of the chakras are in the head or above the head. And then there's the 7 major chakras that are in the, the rest of the body. And, to be more precise, there's like 5 chakras that are in the rest of the body. There's the third eye, which is in the head. But there's several others that are in the head, and then there's some that are above the head. So these chakras are very, very important because what they're doing is they're giving you life. They're regulating your physical body. They're running your body, actually, through the endocrine glands, because each one of the 7 major chakras is associated with an endocrine gland, and the endocrine glands are actually what are giving your body commands so that your body will function. And it is said in the ancient scriptures of India that when prana is in the body, that is defined as life. And when prana leaves the body, that is what is defined as death. So prana, or life force energy, is what's keeping your body alive. Otherwise, your body's just a corpse. It has no inherent life of its own. It is your subtle body that's giving life to your physical body. And it is your subtle senses that are giving you the experience of the senses in your physical body. Physical body inherently doesn't really have senses. The senses are in your subtle body. And that's why after death you can still see, hear, taste, smell, and feel. Yeah. That's why people have near-death experiences, and they're still able to see things and hear things and so on.
Yeah, and that does make an awful lot of sense. And the thing that I've always wondered, though, is this here chi, or life force energy. Is this an intelligent energy, or is there another separate, like, mental body where you get your intellect or your consciousness from?
It's a really good question, Royce. And in fact, yes. The Manomaya Kosha is your mental body, and that's where your senses are. Seeing, hearing, tasting, smelling, and feeling, and that's where your subconscious mind is. And then there's another body called the Vijnanamaya Kosha, which is your intellect and ego. That's where you make decisions, that's where you discern, that's where you have the sense of who you think you are, which is your ego, and that's called the Vijnanamaya Kosha. It's a different body, it's a different sheath of your energy field.
Now, is this were all of these combined into one at some point, or are these all separate units working as one?
They're separate units that work as one. It's called the fivefold sheath. And there are these 5 sheaths: physical body, energy body, mental body, intellect, ego body, and causal body. Those are the 5 bodies.
And I guess naturally, it'd be hard to live minus one or the other. They have to more or less act in unison to have the end product.
That's correct, Royce. All of the bodies have to be functioning, and they have to be working in harmony with each other in order for you to be alive.
Well, isn't that where the real trick comes in, is getting the ego in harmony?
Well, I don't know what trick you're trying to do. The fact is the ego...
What I mean is, you say that all the bodies have to be in harmony. It's been my experience that usually the ego would be the one thing that would not be in harmony, wouldn't it? With the other bodies, I mean. Or maybe I'm viewing the ego a little different than most people might view it.
I'm not sure, but the reality is that the ego is who you think you are. It's not who you really are. Who you really are is your higher self, and your higher self is not one of these five sheaths. It's another body. You have higher bodies above these five sheaths, and these higher bodies are your higher consciousness. Some people might call the super consciousness or higher consciousness.
Or the I am.
The I am. The Atman or I am is who you really are. It's not the ego. The ego is the false sense of self. And, the intellect and ego is not who you really are, although it is perceived by average individuals or by almost everyone. I shouldn't say average individuals. It's perceived by almost everyone except for a very small handful of people who are spiritually awakened. Almost everyone perceives who they think they are is their intellect and their ego. They think that the decision maker inside is who they really are. The ego inside, that's who they really are. That's who they think they are, but it's not who they really are. Who you really are is the I am or Atman or higher self. And that is an infinite, all-loving, all-powerful, beauteous being of light, and that's who you really are.
Okay, now, how do you recognize your Atman at this point?
How you would recognize your Atman is through meditation. It's really the way to do it. I can't really recommend any other way other than meditation. Okay. Although there are several paths to realizing that true self. In the ancient tradition of India, there's several types of what they call yoga. Yoga means union of the individual self with the universal self. That's what yoga means. It doesn't mean union of the nose with the knee, or union of the forehead with the knee, or union with the fingers with the floor, or anything like that. It's not union of something physical in a gym. That's not yoga. Yoga means union with God. It means union of your individual self with the universal self. So there's many paths of yoga, including Raja or royal yoga. There's karma yoga or activity yoga. There's mantra yoga or using sacred sounds. There is a kind of, what else? Jnana yoga, which means realization through understanding or wisdom or coming to realization. There is hatha yoga, which means union through physical culture, through using specific yoga postures and breathing methods and other methods. Kundalini yoga, which means raising this subtle energy through the body. Laya yoga means absorption or absorbing the different chakras, and it has to do with the energy system. So these various types of yoga, I didn't mention all of them. There's also integrative yoga. I didn't mention that. But there's several yoga practices or yoga paths, and all of them will take you to that same goal of realizing the self. But probably the easiest, fastest, most effective way to realize the self is through meditation, and that's what I would recommend.
Okay. Now, what are some of the attributes of yourself besides being, say, like a being of light? I mean, is it an intellectual body, a mental body, or, I mean, does it have these kind of attributes, or?
That's a great question. Royce, that's a fantastic question. So the Atman, or the higher self, or your true nature of being, is a being of light. It's a being that is perfect in every way. It has no flaws or faults. When you experience it, when you experience it in deep meditation or out of meditation, hopefully, once you've established it, you're experiencing unbounded awareness. You're experiencing pure consciousness. You're experiencing wholeness and oneness, perfection, perfect relaxation, perfect peace. It's experienced in a state of peacefulness and wholeness and integration of body and of mind. It's an experience of great bliss, consciousness. It's called Sat Chit Ananda, absolute bliss consciousness. You may be experiencing waves of divine light or divine love or divine energy, which is an indication that you are near that or close to that state of perfection that is the Atman. Atman is the I am, and it is perfect in every way. It is whole, and when you experience it, you just feel that you are one with everything, one balanced and in equanimity and equilibrium. That's what you experience when you are experiencing Atman.
Okay, can you get that with another person like your spouse? I'm assuming what you were just describing. I'm reading this from the chat room.
Yeah, certainly you can experience that with another individual as well. It is an individual experience, however.
Okay. Now, if I'm understanding this correctly, you might say being at one with your Atman would be like being in a position of total existence and, like all else is just kind of faded out. You're just existing sort of, but existing in a form of bliss, kind of like Jesus said, you shall not enter my rest. There's the rest he's referring to is the same thing you're talking about, the Atman.
Okay, I'm not familiar with that exact quote from Jesus, so I can't really comment on that, but the reality is that it is a state that is where you are completely withdrawn from the senses. In other words, usually we're seeing, hearing, tasting, smelling, feeling. Usually our attention is always directed outwards through the senses. So it's just like, I'll give you an analogy. It's just like if you're watching a movie in a movie theater. There's all the images and colors and sound and light and everything on the screen. But when the movie's done, what's left? There's the screen. It's a blank screen. So the Atman is like that blank screen. It's like you are in a state of isness or oneness or wholeness, right, that is not attached to any senses. You've withdrawn completely from the senses. In the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna describes it as a tortoise that withdraws its limbs into the shell. In other words, the limbs, being the senses that were extended outwards, are now retracted, and you're only in that state of wholeness or oneness. There is no sensory experience. So it's the experiencer left alone, just like that screen in the movie theater that has no images on it. It's just the screen. Okay.
That's pretty much what I was saying. You elaborated on it a great deal. I do appreciate that. That would, to me, seem like my idea of description of God and where he was at before all of creation was put in place.
Well, Royce, you're very perceptive, because that's exactly what they call Brahman is the absolute pure consciousness beyond any dualism, beyond any manifestation. So it's a non-dual state. It's the singularity before the Big Bang. And by the way, I discuss this in great detail in my book, The Power of Chakras. In The Power of Chakras, I talk about how the entire creation and universe gets created out of the singularity, and how at the end of creation, it gets absorbed back into the singularity. And I have a fantastic chapter in the book, The Power of Chakras, that's called As Above, So Below. And I talk about how that universal life gets absorbed at the end of creation, and how our individual life as well, and the chakra system, gets absorbed at the end of our evolutionary cycle when we reach spiritual enlightenment. So it's a very profound and esoteric and deep chapter that I recommend anyone who has a sincere interest in developing themselves spiritually to read the Power of Chakras, and to read that specific book, that specific chapter called As Above, So Below.
Okay. Now, I'm showing we got like 4 minutes remaining of today's show. Was there anything, last minute thoughts or anything you'd like to share with my listeners?
Mm-hmm. Well, once again, I'd like to tell people about my website, which is drsusan.org. On that website, you can read the first chapter of any of my books, and you can also listen to a lot of free teleseminars and free interviews. There are links on that website, and there's just a lot of information on that website. And the other cool website is divinetravels.com. That's divinetravels.com. That's divinetravels.com. And on that website, I have amazing travels and tours that are listed on that website, including cruise tours, seminars, I should call them, seminars at sea on cruise ships, and also tours to places like Peru and other sacred places. There aren't very many trips on there right now. There's only a couple trips, but if you would put your email address right there into the box at divinetravels.com, I'll notify you of future events, tours, conferences, all kinds of things that will be taking place in the future. I go to India regularly. There's tours to Peru. There's tours to other sacred places like Egypt and Bali and Sedona and Mount Shasta, the Tetons, retreats. There's all kinds of amazing things that are happening, and these really cool cruise ship seminars at sea. But you just need to subscribe there, and then I'll notify you. And then at drsusan.org, I also recommend you subscribe there, because then I'll notify you about free telesummits, free teleseminars, also places that I'm going to be traveling to and teaching, and new books that are coming out, and so on.
All righty then. And folks, I want to invite y'all to come back and see me this coming up Wednesday. I'm going to be interviewing Tex Mars. The topic's going to be Rothschilds, the Vatican, and central banks. Oh my. And we're going to be discussing the end of time and prophecy and the Illuminati and all kinds of interesting things of that there nature. And don't forget that I'm now a part of Revolution Radio. You can catch me there Thursdays from 1 to 3 Central Standard Time, 2 to 4 their time. I'm still getting used to that, so I kind of had a bit of a brain fart mentioning it. And this coming up Thursday, I'm going to be interviewing Emmanuel Itler or Itir about women healing the world, which actually, Susan, you might have an interest in that one. And then Inhibiting Heaven Now, it was next Saturday with Andrea Matthews. Actually, no, I missed one. Energetic Keys to the Indigo with Maureen Dawn Healy is supposed to be Saturday's guest, and that's a confirmed one. And I would like to thank you folks for listening in. Couldn't have a show without my listeners any more than I could have one without my guests. Until next show, be well, take care of yourselves. Susan, it's been a pleasure having you. And you got an open door here. You want to come back and talk to me in the future?
Well, thank you so much, Royce. It was my pleasure, and I loved the questions you asked. They were really insightful and fascinating.
Well, thank you. And you've been a wonderful interview, and you're a very interesting lady, and you got a lot of information, a lot of stuff out there a lot of people need to hear.
Thank you.
And with that, I'm going to say goodbye, and I'm going to go get me some chili, folks. Y'all have a good weekend and enjoy what's left of it.